Welcome back to the first after lunch session. This is a joint presentation between Shane Nuessler from University of Canberra and me, Kristina Hoeppner from Catalyst IT, because we've been working together on this project, which has the working title of SmartEvidence. And so Shane will take you through the conceptual phase and why it came about, and then we'll look a little bit at the implementation and what is coming next then and how you can get involved. So over to Shane.
Thanks. So on the, we'll just flick through to the next slide. So at the University of Canberra we've used Moodle-Mahara, and actually initially it was used for, in terms of teaching and learning, for occupational therapy. And in occupational therapy you have professional standards, as a lot of the disciplines do. And we developed this model, which in this one is being used by education, whereby every page in Mahara was dedicated to one of the standards. Mm-hmm. So you can see on the top there, the tabs, there's an introductory page, then standard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's 7 of them in education. Mm-hmm. And we set this up as a template so that students could see the standards down the left-hand side, so they can never forget what they were. Down the middle, we put ideas around what evidence, or what constitutes evidence for those standards. And you know, a little area for resources where students can load files and things like that. So it's really meant to overcome some of the, well, it's really a replacement for the paper-based portfolios, and we've pretty much transitioned to electronic fully now. But when we had the paper-based ones, people would maybe not cover a particular standard, or they wouldn't read the instructions. And so here, all the instructions were in one place, the standards were in one place. The problem, and it depends on how you look at this, but what students would do is they say, oh, 1.1, physical, social, intellectual development characteristics of students, demonstrate knowledge, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here's a photo for that. And then they'd say 1.2, understand how students learn. Oh, here's my lesson plan for that. And then 1.3, and then they go down the list, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7. And what you'd have is 7 pieces of evidence on standard 1. And then you'd have 10 pieces of evidence on standard 2, etc., etc. And basically they wouldn't connect the standards into a whole. So they wouldn't see this as, oh, a professional is, you know, all of these substandards connected together in some way. They'd say, I'm just going to do that and that and that and that and that. So what we wanted was a way, when we eventually met with TQI, the Teacher Quality Institute, they actually solved this problem a long time ago. They had an A4 sheet with a matrix on it, which is this one. And they have between 6 and 10 pieces of evidence which have to provide evidence across the entire standard set, substandards and the macro standards. Now what that means is that the marking load for the academic goes down. The student is being encouraged to think across a professional, being a professional, not just the little bits in isolation. And what we wanted to do then was essentially digitize this and make it part of Mahara. Now, that's where I'm going to pretty much hand over to Kristina, because they're the ones who can take those ideas forward and maybe do something with it.
Thank you, Shane. So that's kind of where we got in, or where Shane got in touch with us to say, I want to improve how we work with the ePortfolio to also support working with a standards framework. And so we went through a design phase, and so now we have kind of initial rough specifications available, and also have looked at especially this visualization, because while this may look like ticking the boxes and yes, as soon as I have one piece of evidence and one standard, I'm good to go, I don't really need more. That's not really what it's meant for. So we still need to have the richness behind it. But what you can't really do easily on a piece of paper, especially when you have a huge matrix like that, is to put a lot of details in. So yes, you have the tick box, but then where do you go from there in order to actually see the evidence? And also on the left-hand side, you have the name of the evidence, but it doesn't really tell you a lot again either. So and that's why we want to use the electronic version for it, so that we can enhance it. We don't just want to replicate what we can do on paper, but we want to do it better. And so the idea for the moment is that we take the matrix, make it available, but enrich it with data and with links and so on to make it more easily viewable, and also that people can work more easily with it. So this is just one screenshot of it, of the idea of things, because we haven't gotten to that point yet. But as you can already see, you can, when you click on a standard or on a substandard, you can see the description of that substandard. So you don't have to look in your lead page, you have to find page 10 where it is actually described. And then we still keep in the matrix where a standard has been met. But what you can do now electronically as well, you can also say, well, you're not quite at the checkbox yet, but you have partially met the standards. So we can have an interim state that is visualized here with just the yellow dot. You don't yet have the green dot. So in contrast to the paper version, you'd have to cross things out or use whitex and kind of redo everything. Here you just do that with a click of the mouse. And you can change the status, and depending on whether the matrix is used for self-assessment or for external assessment, if it's for self-assessment, you can say yourself, yes, I think I met the standard. Or if it's for external assessment, the learner cannot tick the green box, but they can also say, yes, I have evidence there, but the partial meeting of the evidence of the standard, or the meeting of the standard, can only be done by the assessor. So it can then also be used in multiple contexts. And then on the left-hand side, you have your evidence pages, and those are just, at the moment, regular pages in Mahara, so that again you can display your evidence in context. Because if you look at one of the substandards, you may not just have a lesson plan, but you may have a lesson plan and all the pictures that you used for it, or the handouts that you use with it. So you shouldn't really be setting up two pieces of evidence on the left-hand side, but all that goes together. And then, of course, sometimes you may want to know, well, do I already have evidence? And in a large matrix like that, it is very difficult to kind of keep the line and realize, well, do I already have something? So at the bottom, you then also get a summary. Well, for substandard 1.3, I already have 3 pieces of evidence, whereas for substandard 1.6, I don't yet have anything. So that you can very quickly see, have I already met all my requirements? And on the back end, so when an administrator sets this up, this should also be very flexible, because everybody has a different language. Mahara is being used around the world, so some people say substandards and standards, others might say something entirely different or use it in a different language, and also meeting a standard might be called something else. Somebody else has 3 levels in there, or says has very different terminology. Sometimes it also depends on the field that you are in. And so what we are wanting to do is have a flexible framework at the back end where you can change all those language strings for one particular evidence map. And then a different one can look very different, that you can also duplicate those evidence maps and really work with it very flexibly.
So yes, that's quick. Where does this sit? Is it in the Mahara for the student?
Yeah. At the moment, the idea is to make it part of a collection. So SmartEvidence will basically be one collection.
Yes.
And depending on whether it is for external assessment or for self-assessment, this evidence map might sit at the beginning, or it might sit at the end. Because for University of Canberra, this visualization is very important for the students to see, so they wanted to have it at the beginning.
Yes.
Whereas TQI said, we don't want this tick-the-box portfolio, so they wanted to put it at the end.
Yeah.
So we don't need to keep those in mind and make it flexible, but essentially it should kind of be treated as one page within a portfolio that you create for this standard that you need to comply with. And so when you tick the box, or when the assessor then ticks the box, again, they shouldn't just tick the box and say, yes, you meet the standard partially or completely, but instead they should also give feedback. So when I tick the box, I need to provide some feedback for it. I need to provide a comment. Again, so that it is rich, so that the student then, or the learner also knows, yeah, why has it been met, or what is still missing. So that is then also built in. And the approach that we take for this big piece of work, as you can see, it's not just a 5-minute job or an hour or 2 weeks job, but it is really a large piece of development. And so we could say, well, we'll use the puzzle approach. We develop as we go along, and one piece fits into the other, and then at the end we have a beautiful picture. However, that's taking a very long time, because it means we do need to have all the budget available and all the people available to deliver this great shiny product at the end. So this is not really the approach that we are taking. Rather, we take the approach which in software development is often called minimum viable product, so that we see how much of the budget and effort and so is needed kind of entirely, and then say, well, we don't really have that available right now, and see what we can actually achieve with what we have at the moment. And so that means we start small. We develop one functionality, put that into Mahara, and it works. It may not work perfectly, and it doesn't have all the bells and whistles and allows you to do everything, but it is a functional piece of software. And then that's how you grow. Then when we have more budget available or more ideas and people contributing, we increase that functionality, and so on, until we are at the very final product. But as you know yourself, in software development, you're never really at this last stage, because there's always something that somebody wants to do differently. And but at least we would get to a point where we say, yes, we've implemented what we wanted to do, or we've changed the direction throughout the way of the implementation, because we had other ideas coming in from other people. And so the first functionality that we implemented for that will be in Mahara 15.04, so in the Mahara version that is still being released this week, and that is the annotations. Because annotations are a piece of work that can stand on their own feet. We don't really need the entire evidence map for it, but we can just implement it. An annotation is basically just a text block that you can put onto a page, and where you can annotate what is on the page. So kind of say why you put all these pieces of evidence together. It very much looks like a text box at the moment, but the idea behind it is once we implement more functionality, that we can then transform that annotation box into richer content. So we will be adding a drop-down menu for the standards to which it complies, for example, and really tie it in with the SmartEvidence map. But we wouldn't be able to do that if we just used a regular text box, because in the end we don't know which text box is actually the one that should be transferred into an annotation, and therefore we implemented that new functionality. And so you can already start using it, not with all the functionality, but at least with a start. And so what's next? One other thing that is already available in the review system is that we can set up pages that are tagged with SmartEvidence, so that we can categorize pages and therefore find them more easily, and later on again group them together because we know they're SmartEvidence pages. And so some of that functionality is already available, but it proved to be a bit more work to put it into 15.04, especially for the administration area, where to place them and what to name them and how it all ties in, and that's why we've left it out for the moment. But what's coming up next really is input from anyone who's interested in that, and that doesn't have to be teaching and learning. That we've seen evidence maps being used by pharmacists. Nursing needs to do a compliance portfolio. So anywhere where you have a standards framework, where you kind of have more of a rigid portfolio compliance, let us know how you're using it. Let us know what you're missing, and whether you, if you especially already use an evidence map, show us how you're using it so that we can put those ideas into the bigger picture and keep those things in mind for future development. But of course also, if you have a little bit of pocket money lying around that your institution doesn't really need at the moment, then that would definitely help greatly for the development of that feature as well, because there's just really a lot of work involved. And so if you're interested in being part of that in any which way, then please let Jane or me know, and we can also then keep you in the loop in what is going on and then see how we can involve you with it. So I think we now have plenty of time for any questions that you may have. And maybe if you wanted to already get a discussion started or see what specifically you are interested if you were to use a matrix like that.
Can you just clarify again how much that you showed us originally is available to us now?
Yeah.
To use in
Yep, just a second. So what is currently available is, that you can go onto a portfolio page. So let's just create a new one. And so you pull your regular evidence in there. So let's just say we'll pull an image in. And then we have some reflective text next to it.
While you're doing that, just a question. Why would you use a text box rather than a journal for reflection?
That was just me doing it quickly here.
It's a question I just want to ask. Yeah, would you? I mean, I always use journals, but
some people do because they find the journals too difficult.
Okay.
And
so
that's when they would use text boxes or notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in general, I agree for reflections, I would use something else. Yeah. So let's. But what you can then do is pull in an annotation block. It will be turned off by default when you upgrade or install Mahara 1504, because sometimes it may not be so self-evident for people what it actually does. But the annotation block is really very simple. It has a text box in there, and you can allow feedback, and you can also give tags, and that's pretty much it. And so now I can say, why you want to use it. And at the moment, you would need to say for which standard it is and kind of really spell everything out in the text itself. Whereas in the future, the idea is that maybe in a drop-down menu or maybe like tags that you can then actually select the standard to which you want to map your annotation so that it'll then show up automatically on the page. So right now, the annotation block is not really very flash or kind of interesting looking simply because there's not really much there. But it does stand on its own. You can use it. So if I now share my page with somebody else, so I just share it with logged in users, and then log in as another person. Don't mind those error messages. That's simply because I'm not connected to the internet at the moment. Go to Untitled 1, the page by Paula. And now I can just place feedback here.
It's designed so that the academic can come back and say,
that is good.
yes, but you still need to do blah, blah, blah. And that's where you result on the evidence map with the yellow. Say it's incomplete, it's still yellow.
Yeah.
But if it was perfect and say, oh, this is really well done, blah, 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 I love this sort of stuff. And then you can green tick it.
Okay.
So it's meant for a dialogue. And then the student can come back and say, oh, but I didn't really want to do that because, or I couldn't because my mentor wouldn't, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
That's good.
Mm.
And so you see the feedback directly on the page, so that is also new in Mahara 1504. We've seen it in the last session, but you can directly click on there, see the feedback or place feedback yourself. And in contrast to any other text box that you work with, once somebody has commented on your annotation, you cannot change it anymore yourself. Because otherwise it would invalidate the feedback, and when you have to meet a standard, you can't really just change the description and they then say, well, you gave me wrong feedback, and therefore, in this case, in contrast also to a text box, you cannot make any changes further.
If you're down the bottom of the screen, it's feedback. Does the same thing happen when you click on that feedback down the bottom?
No, because that is the regular page feedback.
Yep.
What is at the bottom. So once you leave feedback, you can still change the page content. And that is something that we've also been discussing, and where the idea also of snapshotting comes in. So whenever you make a change to a page, similarly to a wiki page, it kind of keeps that, puts it somewhere in storage, and then if you want to go back to that state, then you can do that. So that would be really great for the portfolio to have. And one of my colleagues here in Australia, Nigel Cunningham, he's already working on that timeline feature, what he's calling it right now, so that you can kind of go back into the past and see what your portfolio looked like 2 months ago or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that really kind of, and we called it timeline because at some point I'd kind of really like to have a slider so that you can just go through and see how your portfolio changes and grows. So in the beginning you might just have one blog, and then suddenly you're there 2 or 3, and then you continue like that. Yeah. So that's already in the making, and I think he's having the prototype available very soon, so we can also look at it for including in the October version.
Brooke, the feedback going through the annotation on the page, can other viewers see that?
Depends if you make it public. So that functions like regular feedback.
Is that for the whole page, or can you just block that feedback from the viewers?
If you say when you put an annotation block here, or when you make a feedback, you can say whether it's public or not public, and so whether only the author of the page shall see it, or if everybody, and that functions like the regular feedback as well.
So you could assess as a teacher doing. I mean, if you're teaching students, you could let them know, yes, you're meeting those graduate qualities, but then to say down the track when they're looking for a job, they can use those evidence pages without potential employees reading their teachers' comments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless it's good comment.
Yeah. And that is then always up to the teacher or instructor or assessor to decide whether they want to make it public or not. And oftentimes what I do when I'm thinking of giving feedback really is it feedback where I'm kind of really commenting and they still need to improve things, and the portfolio is not quite there yet, and it is a bit longer and might not really be seen so greatly by others, or they may not really want to have it there and seen by others, then I put the feedback on privately. But if it is kind of final feedback or very good feedback and extremely positive, then it's usually immediately public. And our page author can always make feedback public anyway, or request it to be made public. So if they eventually decide not to have it private, then they can do it.
So Christine, that page you had earlier with all the columns and the ticks and all that, and you click on a tick and the information would come up. Is that available yet or not?
This one?
No, the earlier page.
The map itself? No, not yet. Okay. No, that's really where we are building up to, and that is where we need some more help from people,
okay.
And because it is really a big infrastructural change, putting it in, and so we still have to do a bit more work on that.
And is that particularly what you're calling SmartEvidence?
That would be the map itself.
Essentially.
Yeah.
With some of these other things around to support that.
Yeah. So that would be the map itself, but it does have a lot of other things behind it so that it can actually be populated. Yeah.
Because you'll want more than one framework, as Kristina was saying.
Have you got any idea of time?
No, not yet. Ideally, we will have something more for for the October version, so 1510, so that we really go gradually. Because as I said, we can't really do one big piece of work and then have everyone waiting for it. Because what we do want to approach it in a more agile way, so that as soon as we have something available, that it goes out to the users, and in our case to all users means really with the releases, that you can test it, that you can play with it, give us feedback, and then we'll see, well, yes, this direction was a good one, or, well, we actually have to change some more things in there before we go on to other pieces. Just so that we don't go down a track which then actually doesn't really help a lot of people. And so that's why we start with and kind of look at more in the process of agile development instead of just big bang, here's everything, and then we only get the feedback and just have to redo things.
I think a general rule is as well that if you want to speed certain things up, you can always see what you can contribute money-wise as well.
Okay, I think we have to close now, though. If you do want to know more, please get in touch with Shane and me, and we can then give you some more information and see how you want to get involved in things.
All right, thanks for seeing me.